Welcome back to Laura Horan's infographic video. Now we're going to talk about context, which is essentially, first it asks what's the central message of my infographic. And I've decided that that's what's interesting about bike counter data and why should we care. So I've created context for this message using similar information by including displays created with the actual bike counter data. So it's essentially making a case for itself. So these displays are the heat maps, the column chart, and the line graph. And then annotations are used to point out the interesting bits of information. So for example, that Tuesdays are the busiest bike days in Fremont. Context for the message is also created using different information and sort of adjacent information, including who benefits from bike counter data, as well as a location display covering where bike counters are within the city of Seattle. These don't display the actual data, but they add context to the displays, so viewers get a better idea of what the project is about. Next, let's talk about unity and variety. Unity is created through my infographic through consistent use of color throughout the infographic, as well as a consistent type model. We talked about both of these things earlier in the first video, but again, the orange and blue throughout the different displays, as well as a very consistent type hierarchy that uses consistent title styles and annotation styles, etc. Variety is created through the various size of the displays in the infographic, from the small maps and bikers on the trail to larger displays like the line graph, as well as the bike wheel relationship display. Additionally, the shapes used in these displays vary greatly. For example, there's the curves of the wheel and the trail versus the rectangular shapes in the heat maps and the column charts, as well as the more amorphous shapes like the maps and the line graphs. So this adds like more visual interest. All right, if we compare the unity and variety created in my infographic to what's in my model, we see that while it uses a different color model, the colors are used consistently throughout the infographic as well as the type. Looking at shapes, it's interesting because it adds both variety and unity. There are lots of different shapes, from hexagons to circles to maps to lines. To interesting honeycomb combinations of the hexagons. So that adds varieties, but things are repeated. So for example, there's a circle here in this relationship diagram as well as in the pie chart, and the hexagons are repeated several times throughout the infographic as well as in the background. There's also two maps. While we're here, let's touch again briefly on the layout. Again, it uses a title in the upper left-hand corner. And then beyond that, it's divided into half the page on this first display, quarter of the page moving right, followed by, in the upper right-hand quarter, being divided into 3 different displays. Mine uses a similar layout with similar dividers, although my upper right-hand corner, instead of having 1 vertical display and 2 horizontal, on the other half of that vertical display, mine are just 2 horizontal displays. Finally, we can talk about alignment. As I was creating my infographic, I took great care in making sure that information within my displays were lined up. So for example, all my comments and annotations within the heat map line up, as well as the different titles for the chart. Likewise, with my relationship display, I made sure that the copy at the bottom is arranged both vertically aligned, edge aligned, as well as horizontally edge aligned. In my maps, I made sure that the year, the annotation, and the map itself were all center aligned, as well as in the displays overall, like making sure my relationship display was center aligned with my maps, although it is off center at the top intentionally based on the side of my column chart. You may be thinking that while there's a lot of alignment within my individual displays in the infographic, there isn't a lot overall. However, if you look at the original model infographic, while there's a lot of alignment within the individual displays, overall there isn't a lot of alignment between items. So I am in concurrence with my model. All right, that wraps up my presentation. Thank you for listening.